The call began with someone berating Youngwoo, accusing him of being crazy and foolish for getting involved with Jae-yi. The caller reminded him that provoking her would inevitably anger Rayon. Youngwoo dismissed the scolding, telling the person to shut up, but admitted to himself that he should have let Rayon beat him up so he could have sued him afterward. The caller pointed out that Youngwoo had retaliated the moment Rayon punched him and suggested that he avoid future gatherings, as the others felt uncomfortable with his presence. The caller offered to buy him a drink another time before ending the call. Fuming, Youngwoo blamed everything on Jae-yi, calling her names and vowing to find out where she worked. Before he could say more, Chae appeared, addressing him by name. Surprised, Youngwoo demanded to know who Chae was. Chae cryptically replied, questioning his identity as well, and then asked Youngwoo if he wanted to play. Confused and frightened, Youngwoo screamed. Meanwhile, Yoon woke up complaining about a stomachache, wondering if it was due to mixing different types of alcohol the night before. She heard the doorbell and wondered who would visit so early on a Sunday morning. Chae announced himself as the visitor, referring to himself as the Grim Reaper. Yoon, surprised, asked why he rang the doorbell instead of just coming in as usual. Chae reminded her that she had asked him not to show up unannounced anymore. Yoon was touched by his consideration. Chae noticed her reaction and told her to stop looking at him as if he were a younger brother who had finally grown up. Yoon denied thinking that and offered him ramen, which he declined. She privately thought that, for some reason, Chae seemed younger than her. Curious, Yoon asked Chae about his age, wondering if Grim Reapers typically worked for centuries. Chae admitted that was true for higher-ranking Reapers but trailed off before finishing his thought, distracted by the boiling water. Yoon focused on preparing the ramen, commenting on how it was the best remedy after drinking. Chae noted how much she loved to drink, and Yoon asked again if he wanted to eat. Chae refused, questioning why she was so insistent. Yoon explained that he looked tired, and she assumed he hadn't eaten. Chae revealed he had been working until then, prompting Yoon to suggest he should have gone straight to rest. Chae admitted he wanted to check if she had made it home safely, since he hadn't been able to take her home the previous night. Observing her now, he concluded that she seemed fine. Yoon thanked him and updated him about Raon's fight with Youngwoo. Chae deduced that was why Raon's face was bruised. Yoon expressed guilt, feeling partially responsible, though she believed Youngwoo was harmless and wouldn't have done much to her. Chae disagreed, implying Youngwoo wasn't as harmless as she thought. He then suggested Raon might have acted out of strong emotions because she was involved. Yoon dismissed the idea, questioning why Raon would do such a thing and jokingly asserting that she was the older one since she was born first. Chae thought to himself that while Woobin's interest in her was obvious, Yoon seemed oblivious. He guessed she was so focused on her emotions that she didn't notice what was happening around her, especially since she had mentioned only having long-term crushes before. Yoon noticed Chae avoiding her gaze and asked why. Chae replied cryptically, saying they had a long way to go. When Yoon pressed him to explain, he told her to listen carefully, but their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Jae-ha arrived, explaining that his in-laws had sent him a lot of fruit, so he came to share some with her. He noticed Chae and asked who he was. Yoon explained to Jae-ha that Chae was there because a large spider had appeared in her bathroom. She said she had posted on a website for odd jobs looking for help to catch the spider, and Chae had responded. Jae-ha expressed mild surprise, and Yoon added that Chae had successfully caught the spider, so she offered him a drink before he left. Jae-ha then suggested Chae should have some of the apples and pears he had brought before leaving. Yoon quickly interjected, saying that Chae needed to leave soon because he had another bug-catching job to attend to. Chae confirmed her story, and Yoon turned to Jae-ha, offering him something to eat instead. Jae-ha declined, explaining that his husband was waiting for him downstairs, and that he had only stopped by briefly to drop off the fruit. Before leaving, he thanked Chae for helping his sister, though as he walked out, Chae commented that Yoon was terrible at lying. Yoon defended herself, saying she had successfully covered for him. Outside, Dangwoo remarked to Jae-ha that he had left Yoon's place quickly and could have spent more time with her. Jae-ha speculated that Yoon might have a boyfriend, inadvertently leaving behind a big misunderstanding. Back inside, Yoon enjoyed the fruit, remarking that it was delicious and expressing regret that Jae-ha hadn't stayed to have some. Shortly after, Round texted her to ask how she was feeling. Yoon reassured him that she was fine and asked about his condition. Round replied that he was okay, but mentioned that his face was swollen and his cheeks resembled balloons. Yoon, unsurprised, teased him about it. When Yoon called him, she scolded him for not seeing a doctor. Round explained that it was Sunday and that he didn't see the point of visiting a doctor for such a minor injury. Yoon voiced concern that his mother, Anna, would be upset about his condition, but Round revealed that she was actually proud of him. Yoon expressed her dislike of eating ramen for hangovers, but Round countered, saying it was the best remedy after drinking. They talked on the phone until Yoon felt her cheeks grow warm. Reflecting on their conversation, she realized that the awkwardness between them from the previous week had eased. Though she still harbored feelings for him as her first love, she accepted that they were now simply friends. However, her thoughts shifted to Woobin, whose presence left her feeling overwhelmed. While talking to Round had been enjoyable, Yoon found herself wishing she could have a similar conversation with Woobin. She regretted how their parting had felt rushed and lamented not having his number to check if he made it home safely. Determined to act, she resolved to give Woobin her number the next day when he came to the cafe, even if he rejected her. Unexpectedly, Woobin approached her first, admitting he had been worried about her after their last meeting but hadn't been able to contact her. He nervously offered his number, saying she didn't have to accept it if it made her uncomfortable. Surprised, Yoon confessed that she had been planning to give him her number as well. Woobin was overjoyed, and Yoon felt the same. Excited, she thought to herself, "Mr. Che, I finally did it." Elsewhere, Round remarked that he was still feeling jet-lagged. A voice expressed surprise, and Round remembered belatedly that Jae-ha was coming over that day. During their conversation, Jae-ha speculated aloud about something, and Round's mother exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe that my Yoon has a boyfriend." Round thought to himself about the mention of Yoon having a boyfriend. At first he had been a bit shocked, but upon reflection, he found it strange for Yoon not to have a boyfriend given the circumstances. He guessed that the man he had seen with her a couple of times must be the one. Though he admitted to feeling upset, he blamed himself for being away from her side for 4 years. Still, he consoled himself with the thought that as long as he remained by her side in the end, he would be fine waiting. Meanwhile, Yoon was ecstatic. She repeatedly told herself she wasn't dreaming. Che noticed her excitement and asked what she was doing with her phone and why she was laughing. Yoon proudly revealed that she had exchanged numbers with Woobin. Che, curious, asked if that meant they were now dating. Yoon quickly clarified that they weren't yet, explaining that exchanging numbers was just the first step. She hoped they would get to know each other, meet a few times, and then eventually start dating. Che remarked that she still had a long way to go. Despite this, Yoon felt overjoyed, admitting it all felt like a dream. She reminded Che how she used to be too nervous to even speak to Woobin, and declared that she was celebrating. She offered to treat Che to whatever he wanted, and Che took her up on it, asking for a chocolate frappuccino. Watching her enthusiasm, Che noted that Yoon had made progress, and thought to himself that if she kept it up and began dating Woobin, she would start a new chapter in her life, and perhaps he would as well. Yoon brought Che his drink, mentioning that she had added extra whipped cream. While everything seemed positive, she couldn't shake a strange, undefined feeling lingering inside her. At the same time, Woobin was thinking about Yoon. He told himself that once they got to know each other better, he should ask her out on a date. He wondered what kind of food she liked, realizing he only knew her name. The thought made his heart race unexpectedly. As he worked, Woobin's co-worker approached, asking to take a quick break. Woobin agreed and asked if something was wrong. The co-worker hesitated before relaying a message from Yeonsu, asking Woobin to pick up her calls. Woobin was taken aback, but listened as his co-worker explained that Yeonsu had been crying and begging for help, which had made it hard to refuse. Apologetically, the co-worker added that since Woobin and Yeonsu had been a couple in college, they had felt bad for her. Woobin firmly replied that it wasn't as if he had disappeared without a word. He reminded the co-worker that he and Yeonsu had been adults when they broke up, and their decision to part ways had been mutual. Yeonsu had even initiated the breakup. The co-worker apologized, promising to refuse any future requests from Yeonsu. They added that they didn't mean to trouble Woobin and offered to buy him a drink to make up for it. Woobin reassured them it was fine and thanked them for understanding. The co-worker excused themselves to rest before returning to work. Left alone, Woobin sighed and thought about Yeonsu, wondering what she was trying to accomplish by reaching out to him after all this time. The Grim Reaper was thrilled, exclaiming that the situation was unfolding like a scene from a drama. He remarked how Che had appeared when the returnee was in trouble, helped her, and even went on a late-night date with her. Their exchange of numbers only solidified his optimism. At this rate, he mused, she'll succeed without much trouble. My instincts tell me this will be a total success. Che, skeptical, asked the Grim Reaper how someone born hundreds of years ago could know so much about love. The Grim Reaper brushed off the comment, remarking on Che's sharp tongue, despite only living 22 years. He then instructed Che to keep an eye on the returnee and ensure she didn't die in an accident. Che replied that he was heading out to retrieve a soul and bid farewell. Before he left, the Grim Reaper handed Che some food and cautioned him to be careful. Watching him leave, the Grim Reaper reminisced about raising Che from a young age, lamenting, "That rude brat. I raised him since he was this small and now he's an ungrateful punk." The Grim Reaper's companion chimed in, noting that it was indeed true he was hundreds of years old. Ignoring the comment, the Grim Reaper expressed relief that everything seemed to be progressing smoothly and that they had chosen the right returnee at the right time. Then, realizing he was talking to someone who wouldn't respond, he muttered, "Why did I bother asking you?" Meanwhile, Dan silently pondered the report, wondering if it wasn't Yoon who had dramatically saved the returnee. Elsewhere, Jae's friend Chaewon teased her, saying she would burn a hole through her phone with how intently she was staring at it. Chaewon expressed frustration that Jae was ignoring her while she had kept her schedule free to meet. Apologizing, Jae explained her distraction. Chaewon speculated that since Woobin was an office worker, he might be working late. Then, jokingly, she added, "Or maybe he's just playing around with you." Jae, irritated, told her not to jinx it. Chaewon laughed, assuring her it was just a joke and reminding her that Woobin seemed like an honest person. She urged Jae not to worry and asked what her first text to him had been. Jae admitted she had only sent him a simple hello, and Chaewon playfully scolded her for being so anxious over such a small message. Meanwhile, Woobin was feeling torn between his previous girlfriend, Yeonsu, and Jae. At the cafe, Jae fretted over his silence, noting that he hadn't texted her back or come in during lunch. She began to wonder if Chaewon's joke was true. Even if it wasn't, she thought, who would go so far as to exchange numbers and then ghost her? Just as she was spiraling into doubt, the door opened. Woobin greeted her, and Jae, surprised, asked if he had already had lunch or why he was there. Woobin explained that he had been working outside the office that morning and had to head straight back after lunch but was able to stop by now. Jae offered to make his usual drink, which he accepted. Woobin apologized for not texting her back, explaining that urgent work had come up the previous night, and by the time he finished, it was very late. He added that his morning had been busy with preparations for work outside the office. Jae assured him it was fine and said she had only sent the text to say hello. Woobin, feeling guilty, promised to respond to her texts promptly in the future. She handed him his iced Americano, and he regretfully mentioned that he couldn't stay long as he had snuck out during work hours. Jae encouraged him to return to work, and Woobin reassured her that he would text her for real next time before leaving. She wished him a productive day as he exited the cafe. As Woobin left, Round accidentally bumped into him. Woobin stepped aside, allowing Round to go first. After a brief exchange of apologies, Jae looked up and recognized Round, calling his name. Jae remarked that Round should have informed her about his visit, expressing surprise and feeling caught off guard. Round admitted that he had wanted to surprise her. Jae, still upset, told him that he was no longer allowed to surprise her. Round asked if she was still angry that he hadn't let her know when he returned to Korea. Jae mentioned it wasn't just that, but also how he hadn't informed her when he went to study abroad. She urged him to hurry up and eat, adding that the meal was on her. Curious, she asked why he had come so suddenly. Raun, feigning hurt, questioned whether she was upset about his visit. Jae clarified it wasn't the case. He then explained that he had come simply out of curiosity. The last time he visited, the cafe had been closed, and since he had always wanted to see the place, he took the opportunity. He noted how she had always dreamed of becoming a cafe owner. Jae was surprised that he remembered, clarifying that her sister was technically the owner. Raun dismissed the distinction, remarking that it was the same thing. As they conversed, he observed the emptiness of the cafe and asked if business was going well. Jae reassured him that since they were surrounded by office buildings, they only got busy during specific times. Che, elsewhere, realized it wasn't a good time to approach Jae and decided to finish his own task first. Raun noticed someone leaving and asked if Jae's boyfriend had just walked away without coming in. Startled, Jae quickly denied having a boyfriend. Raun brought up how Jaeha had mentioned a man and seemed happy about Jae having a boyfriend. Jae dismissed the notion, explaining that the man Jaeha saw had come over to deal with a bug. She added that if she did have a boyfriend, her sister would already know. While speaking, Jae suddenly noticed Raun's expression and asked if he was unwell. Raun brushed it off, saying he just felt sleepy all of a sudden but was fine now. She asked if he was still jet-lagged. Internally, Raun felt guilty, realizing he was happy to hear Jae didn't have a boyfriend. Curious, Jae asked who Raun had seen outside. He mentioned it was likely the former part-time employee. Jae guessed it might have been Mr. Che, noting that he often dropped by when he was in the area. She speculated that he might have left after seeing her with Raun. Raun, however, silently noted that Jae's expression suggested she wasn't being entirely truthful. He suspected she might be interested in someone and resolved not to feel anxious, promising to stay by her side from now on. Raun then asked if it was really okay for her to close the cafe early. Jae reassured him that she had her sister's permission and that she wanted to treat him to a nice meal since he had returned. Raun remarked that it seemed a little late, but before they could continue, Jae noticed someone in the distance. She thought it might be Mr. Che again and noted that the atmosphere suddenly felt strange. Spotting a figure in a black hat and jacket, which reminded her of a Grim Reaper, she became uneasy and wanted to leave quickly. As Jae was about to leave, Raun abruptly shouted for her to stop. Nearby, people gasped and shouted in alarm, reacting to an unseen danger. Meanwhile, the Grim Reaper observed the situation, remarking that the returnee's life held significance and that this was part of her path as the heir of Great Yomra. Raun grabbed Jae just in time, saving her from harm, but she was left in shock, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The driver, seemingly drunk, had caused the accident. A bystander lost her life and others rushed to help, attempting to rescue more people trapped in the car. The Grim Reaper witnessed everything but did not react, instead walking away indifferently. Jae remained frozen, unable to speak, as the lifeless woman lay only a few feet away from her. Raun called out to her, but she seemed unresponsive and eventually fainted. Raun, having informed Jaeha of Jae's condition, ensured she received medical attention, including an IV drip. He prepared to take her to her sister's house once she stabilized. When Jae regained consciousness, she appeared disoriented and unaware of her surroundings, much to Raun's relief. Explaining they were at the hospital, he reassured her that he had brought her there after she fainted due to the accident. Feeling guilty for causing Raun so much trouble, she apologized, though Raun insisted it was nothing to worry about. Noticing Raun's hands were reddened and scraped from when they fell, Jae blamed herself once again. She admitted she no longer felt dizzy or nauseous, though the incident had triggered a memory she had suppressed. Despite her erased memories, the similar circumstances of the accident had brought them back. Concerned, Raun asked if she had experienced a similar accident in the past. Though hesitant to reveal the truth, Jae admitted she had been hit by a car before. She explained that she hadn't told Jaeha because she didn't want to worry anyone, though the incident had left her deeply traumatized. Realizing the depth of her trauma, Raun expressed regret for not being there for her. His words moved Jae to tears as she felt overwhelmed by her emotions and fear. Raun comforted her, promising to stay by her side, and hugged her. Meanwhile, Che, who had been nearby, left quietly without saying anything. Later that night, Che visited Jai again. She couldn't understand why he was acting so much like a Grim Reaper, though she didn't mind his presence, even if he had entered without knocking. Since it was her sister's room, she wasn't surprised he had found her. Jai, however, wasn't entirely okay, and had been scolded extensively by her sister earlier. Despite her sister's insistence, Jai was reluctant to close the cafe and see a doctor again. Che, having witnessed the accident, recalled the moment vividly. Jai had encountered another Grim Reaper, dressed in traditional black attire with a black hat, which contrasted with Che's more casual style. She remembered that Che had worn the same outfit when they first met. Reflecting on her 100-day mark and the possibility of failure, she hoped that if she were to die, Che would be the one to come for her, as his presence would make her feel less afraid. Eventually, Jai drifted off to sleep, though Che appeared melancholic about something, silently observing her as she rested. Che reflected on his existence, recalling that death had always been his companion because he embodied death itself. A Grim Reaper remarked on Che's role, identifying him as the next candidate for the Great Yomra, though currently just a child. Another Grim Reaper expressed admiration for Che's unique perspective, while Che dismissed the need for formality, asserting that he would speak freely and looked forward to working with the twins. One of the Grim Reapers found his demeanor arrogant, while Che calmly stated that his sole purpose was to survive and fulfill his reason for being born. The conversation shifted as a Grim Reaper asked Che whether the punishment assigned to the latest batch of the dead was appropriate. Che, unable to grasp human emotions, affirmed that all 10 individuals had committed murder, a serious crime. The Grim Reaper agreed, but questioned whether their crimes should be judged solely based on their actions, without considering their relationships with others. Presenting various cases, the Grim Reaper suggested Che review them for deeper understanding. However, Che insisted that murderers, regardless of their circumstances, were criminals. Frustrated, the Grim Reaper argued that Che's bookish understanding was insufficient and that he lacked experience with humans due to being born and raised in the underworld. They decided to consult the Great Yomra about this. Che later realized that this led to Yoon selecting Jai. The Grim Reaper believed Jai was a good choice because she had strong reasons to live again, making her an ideal case for Che's test. Although skeptical, Che reluctantly agreed, noting it seemed unfair to turn back time for her. The Grim Reaper emphasized that the Great Yomra had approved the decision and that Jai's case was vital for the fate of the underworld. Che, tasked with guiding her, memorized the instructions and prepared to do his best, though he viewed the situation as challenging for Jai. He understood their meeting was meant to give him more experience with humans. Meanwhile, Jai expressed her exhaustion, noting the early doctor's visit. Raun, who accompanied her, reassured her, saying it wasn't a problem. She thanked him for the drink and apologized for troubling him, but Raun insisted he did it willingly and she needn't feel bad. Jai, however, found his words disconcerting, as they gave her the wrong impression, especially while she was still shaken from the previous day's events. Raun pointed out that her customers might be surprised to find the cafe suddenly closed. Jai explained that Damwoo had promised to put up a notice about the closure, though she felt guilty about disappointing her regulars. She briefly considered texting Woobin to inform him, but hesitated, unsure if it was appropriate. Raun lightened the mood by suggesting they spend the day together and finally have a meal since they missed the chance the day before. A notice posted at the cafe read, "Temporary closure due to personal circumstances. The cafe will be closed today. We apologize for the inconvenience." Woobin, upon seeing it, wondered if Jai was unwell. Jai found herself enjoying the moment, expressing how fun it was. Raun remarked that he couldn't have imagined the sequel being released 10 years later. Jai agreed, noting that the cast members still looked the same and that the main character remained as cool as ever. Raun reminded her of how she was captivated by the main character when she watched the first movie, and Jai commented on how some people aged gracefully. Raun admitted he was too engrossed in the movie to drink anything and asked if she wanted a drink as well. Jai requested a sip from his drink, though she silently chastised herself, recalling she had planned to treat him the day before, but failed to. She also felt guilty because Raun had woken up early for her that morning. Raun brought up the release of Tapman 2, asking if she had seen it yet. Jia realized she had forgotten about it due to her busy schedule and asked if it was already out. Round confirmed it had been released the previous week and noted it was worth watching. Jia reflected on how she had missed the opportunity to watch it in a theater before and resolved to see it this time on the big screen. Round suggested they go together and enjoy some popcorn, adding that it had been a while since they did that. They decided on a sweet and salty mix for their snack. As they entered the theater, Round remarked it had been a long time since he visited one, while Jia admitted everything was happening quickly. She told herself they were just hanging out as friends, though she couldn't help feeling a bit self-conscious. When she suddenly felt thirsty, Round handed her his drink, telling her to go ahead. As they turned their phones back on, Jia noticed a message from Woobin. He had reached out first, worried about her. She quickly texted back, assuring him she was okay and had only gone to the doctor for a checkup. Woobin replied, asking if she was unwell, but Jia reassured him she was fine. Meanwhile, Rayon observed her reaction and thought to himself how difficult it was to hide all his feelings. Though he had promised himself he would wait, seeing her smile because of someone else still hurt. He recalled a moment when she had insisted on going home alone. In the present, Jia noticed Rayon seemed off and asked if he was tired. Rayon brushed it off, suggesting they explore the mall and mentioning he needed to buy some clothes. Jia teased him about planning to spend the entire day with her, which he didn't deny. Elsewhere, Che approached a Grim Reaper, asking for help with the returnee and offering a bribe. The Grim Reaper was surprised, pointing out that Che had previously declined his assistance. Che admitted he wasn't asking for much now. The Grim Reaper noted that his ability to help was limited since this was Che's test, questioning whether Che's interest had grown. Che maintained it was still a ridiculous task, to which the Grim Reaper remarked how people never changed. Despite his earlier statements, Che confessed quietly, "I don't want her to die." Jai's co-worker had noticed something unusual about her manager. She asked if it was that obvious, to which Jai responded with a question, clearly unsure. Her co-worker was surprised by Jai's reaction and pointed out that despite her manager not being at the office that day, Jai seemed unusually happy. The co-worker wondered aloud if something had happened between them. Jai explained that they were supposed to have dinner together later that evening and shared that, after a text from her manager the previous day, he had continued messaging her. She mentioned that while her co-worker was just texting, she was still having fun with the interaction. Jai then showed the conversation. Her manager had messaged her, expressing his relief that she was fine, but still wanting her to get checked out. He then suggested treating her to a meal the next day to ensure they both took care of themselves. Jai joked about whether this was a historical moment. The co-worker, now more curious, asked if her manager would be meeting her later that evening. Jai explained that he had mentioned he would be working outside the office all day and would not be at the cafe. The co-worker teased her about how much they seemed to be sharing their schedules now, to which Jai responded, saying it was time for her to go home. Her co-worker replied, claiming to be fine with working overtime. Jai, dismissing the teasing, remarked that she would enjoy her evening and said she was unsure if she would be able to eat properly. Just then, a voice interrupted, and a figure appeared. The voice introduced itself as a Grim Reaper and asked if Jai was Yoon Jai. Shocked, Jai demanded to know who the figure was and how long they had been standing there. She also joked that she felt like she was seeing a ghost. The figure then revealed itself to be a Grim Reaper and introduced themselves as Hyun Irang. Jai apologized for being frightened, not realizing Irang was also a Reaper. Irang reassured her, explaining that everyone gets scared, and asked if Jai had been frequently startled by another Grim Reaper, Mr. Che. Jai shared that Che had started using the door after she had gotten frightened a couple of times. Irang, slightly amused, commented that Chai seemed considerate. Then, in a more serious tone, Irang remarked that Che had even asked for their help. Jai, still unsure, asked if Irang was implying something about Che. Irang didn't respond directly, but instead asked Jai if she had seen another Grim Reaper at the scene of an accident a few days prior. Jai confirmed that she had, though it still left her a bit shaken. Irang sympathized, understanding how frightening such an experience could be. Jia explained that she was fine now, but still wondered if it was connected to the situation. Irang explained that even if they erased her memory, some fragments of the experience might remain, lingering and causing lingering fear. They reassured Jia that the memory wouldn't resurface unless she encountered a similar situation. Still, Irang would seal those fragments just in case. Jia thanked Irang for their help, then asked if they had come just to explain that. Irang responded, dismissing the idea, and explained that from now on, they would also be helping her with her love life. Irang offered to listen to any concerns Jia might feel uncomfortable sharing with Chai or others. Jia was surprised, asking if 2 Grim Reapers would really help her with her love life. Irang, seemingly amused, commented on the cafe's cake being delicious and mentioned looking forward to working with Jia. After some back and forth about the quality of the cake, Irang teased that Jia's colleague had even given them food. They joked about returning to the cafe for free treats. Che, watching the exchange, commented on the potential risks of Irang's comments, warning that they couldn't risk bankrupting the cafe. Irang reassured him that everything would be fine, then noticed that Che seemed unusually focused on someone. Che admitted that he was keeping an eye on Kim Woobin, Jia's manager. Irang asked if something was wrong, and Che answered cautiously that he was just looking out for Jia in case any problems arose. He added that if there was an issue, Jia could be in danger. Jia reflected on her lack of dating experience. Her dating history was practically non-existent until her late teens, when she developed a crush on someone named Rayon. She had been told that everyone dates in college, which led her to date an upperclassman in the same club. However, even that relationship didn't turn out as expected. One day, a classmate asked why Jia was dating the guy if she didn't even like him, wondering if it was out of pity. Jia was taken aback by the question and asked what they meant. The classmate, realizing they might have been too blunt, apologized. Jia explained that the guy had confessed his feelings for her first, and she didn't think it was a bad idea to give it a try. However, her friend then pointed out that Jia seemed to sigh every time she had to meet him, implying that Jia might have been dating him out of pity. Jia was left speechless, but the comment made her realize something about herself. Fortunately, the upperclassman soon had to leave for his mandatory military service, and Jia used that as an excuse to break up with him. She wished him the best, and reflected that she needed to like someone first to truly enjoy a relationship. That realization marked the start of her understanding of what she wanted from love. Now, for the first time in her life, Jia was going on a date with someone she genuinely liked. As she sat down with him, Woobin apologized for being late, asking if she had been waiting long. Jia reassured him, saying she had just arrived. Woobin, relieved, suggested they hurry and get something to eat because she must be hungry. The two were on their first date, and Jia felt happy and excited. As they ate, Woobin seemed pleased that Jia liked the place he had chosen. He admitted that he had been torn over where to go, but was glad she enjoyed it. Woobin explained that he often came to this restaurant because he liked it, and now he was happy to be there with her. He added that for their first date, he thought Western food would be a safe choice. Jia replied that she loved all kinds of food, including Western food. Woobin smiled and suggested they continue to eat good food together from now on, to which Jia happily agreed. She thought to herself that this wasn't a dream. She imagined running outside and telling everyone she knew. If they kept meeting like this, maybe they'd start seeing each other more seriously and meet every weekend. Then, Jia chuckled, thinking about how she didn't need to bother Che with her thoughts. Just then, Woobin got up to use the restroom, leaving his phone behind. Jia noticed the phone was vibrating intensely from an incoming call. She thought it must have been important because the call kept ringing without ending. As the phone almost slipped off the table, she caught it just in time. She checked the caller ID and saw it was someone named Yeonsu. Meanwhile, on the other end, Yeonsu was talking to someone, lamenting that Woobin hadn't answered his calls again. Despite that, Yeonsu believed Woobin hadn't blocked him, which meant he might still be hesitating. Another lady at the table then called Yeonsu to join them, but Yeonsu explained that they had already been drinking too much and had stepped out to sober up. Yeonsu said they wouldn't be able to keep up with their pace and was going to pass out if they tried. The lady insisted she could drink more, but Yansu pointed out something strange on the lady's face. The lady quickly dismissed it and instead commented that the more she looked at Yeonsu, the more she was reminded of her best friend. At first, she had even thought Yeonsu was wearing a wig when she stepped into the office. Yeonsu was surprised and intrigued, saying that now she really wanted to meet the woman's best friend. Jae was walking home, her mind occupied with thoughts. She muttered to herself that the situation had stopped, and she should just pretend she hadn't seen anything. She regretted not simply putting the phone back without looking at the screen. Just then, Woobin spoke up, asking if they should head out since the staff had mentioned they'd bring their coats. Jae responded by pointing out that his phone had been vibrating for a while, wondering aloud who could be calling him at this hour. Woobin, curious, suggested it might be the office, and Jae joked that it could be a really, really important call. As Woobin checked his phone, Jae opened a soda can to drink. She pondered, feeling troubled about who could be calling him. Then her phone rang. Chaewon's name appeared on the screen. Jae answered, and Chaewon immediately began speaking excitedly, telling her about a co-worker who had returned from an overseas branch. Chaewon mentioned that the co-worker looked just like Jae, and at first, she had even thought it was her. Jae, surprised, asked if they really looked that similar, and Chaewon responded that not only did they look alike, but they also gave off the same vibes. However, Chaewon added that the woman looked more like Jae's older sister than Jae's actual sister. Jae, amused, replied that she and her sister didn't look alike at all. Chaewon then teased that if she ever had to work outside the office with this co-worker, she would bring her to Jae's cafe. Jae, curious, asked Chaewon if she was home yet, as she had mentioned having dinner with her co-workers. Chaewon confirmed she was on her way home, and then asked Jae how her date had gone, noticing Jae had been oddly quiet about it. Jae answered that it had gone well, but she was on her way home now and had planned to call Chaewon once she got there. Chaewon suggested they talk after Jae had freshened up, and Jae agreed, saying she would call in an hour. Chaewon apologized in advance if she fell asleep before Jae called. Jae assured her to get home safely, and after ending the call, she reflected that she couldn't tell Chaewon about everything. She feared that if Chaewon found out, she would say she had been right all along. Jae sighed, thinking about how she had no one else to talk to. At that moment, Mr. Che appeared, startling her. He asked what she was doing there and told her to go home. Jae replied, seemingly lost in thought, that she was wondering why life could be so bittersweet. Che, confused, asked if she was drunk. Jae, offering him a seat, asked if he wanted some chips. Che told her to go home once she was done drinking, adding that it sounded like something had gone wrong on her date. Jae, however, denied it, explaining that they had a nice meal and parted ways. Che didn't buy it, pointing out that if it had gone well, Jae would have been smiling and bragging about it. Jae, impressed with his observation, said he was too perceptive. Che then insisted that she tell him what had really happened, claiming that if she didn't, he would never know. Jae hesitated, explaining that if Che confirmed her suspicions, she would only feel more depressed, so she preferred to keep it to herself for now. She assured him it wasn't a big deal and that she would tell him when she was sure. She admitted that she kept wanting to rely on him because he was such a good listener. Che replied that he didn't mind if she did. Meanwhile, Irang the Grim Reaper seemed concerned and commented that they hoped this wasn't what they were thinking it was. Another Grim Reaper, observing from the sidelines, dismissed Irang's worries, suggesting that they were overreacting. Irang responded that a woman's instincts were rarely wrong, and she didn't want to dismiss the possibility. The second Grim Reaper, however, argued that even if Irang's suspicions were correct, it wasn't their business and they should just let things unfold. They pointed out that Che wouldn't be able to understand what Jae was feeling unless she told him. Irang agreed, admitting that even if Che figured it out, there was nothing he could do. After all, his work was done, and he wouldn't be able to see her again anyway.